Hello, gorgeous souls, and welcome to another one of my Spiritual Queens Badass podcast episodes. Today, I am so excited to have the wonderful Robin Sharma with us. So, Robin, if you don't know, is a globally respected humanitarian who, for over a quarter of a century, has been devoted to helping human beings realize their native gifts. One of the top leadership and personal mastery experts in the world, his #1 international bestsellers, such as the 5 a.m. Club, the Everyday Hero Manifesto, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, The Greatness Guide, and Who Will Cry When You Die, have sold over 25 million copies in more than 92 languages, making him one of the most widely read authors alive. Welcome to the show, Robin. How are you doing?
Emma, what a pleasure. I've been looking forward to meeting you.
Likewise. I have been a long-term lover of your work. I first read The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari in, I think it was 2017, I read that. So when your new book came out, I instantly pre-ordered it because I knew it was going to be some of me and I was really, really going to love it. So I'm so excited to share this with my listeners today.
Thank you. I'm grateful that you read my work. I have a sacred bond with my readers, and everyone who reads my work means so much to me. So thank you.
So, Robin, one question that I love to ask every guest who comes on the podcast is, when did you spiritually awaken? What's your story?
Well, I'd say the top of one mountain is the bottom of the next, Emma. So
Mhm.
let's just say I'm a work in progress. I have a long way to go on my human path, my spiritual path. Yet, if I look back to 25 years ago when I really started a lot of meditation and journaling and nature walks and healing work, I've come a long way.
Mm. Yeah, and like you say, I love that analogy of the top of one mountain is the bottom of another because as so many people have said on this podcast, how they're always awakening in different layers and different levels and in different seasons of their life. So I love what you say because I really feel it is that lifelong journey, isn't it? That lifelong commitment to the unraveling of how that journey looks for you.
Yes, I see it. First of all, I'd have to say, I would be scared if someone said, I've done my work and I'm spiritually awakened. That would sort of scare me. I think there have been a few souls that have graced the planet before us that have got to all light. In other words, no shadows. In other words, enlightenment. And then the second thing I'd say is the way I see it in some ways is the spiritual path is a series of small deaths.
Mm.
So who you need to be tomorrow in terms of your highest vision means that who you were yesterday must experience some form of a death. And
Mm.
that's why one spiritual counselor once said to me, this path is not for the faint of heart. I think it's the best work a human being can do. I think it's a fabulous way to spend the rest of your life. That's why the first form of wealth and the wealth money can't buy is growth. Our society says money is wealth, yet personal growth and building intimacy with your gifts and talents is an amazing currency of wealth. But I think it's not the easiest path, yet it's the best path a human being could be on.
Mm. Absolutely. And it takes bravery as well to look at your shadow, to look at your own stuff, and to be able to work through that to come into a life of abundance or a life of prosperity or whatever that looks like for you. And I love how you tie that into wealth as well. So let's talk about The Wealth Money Can't Buy, your new book. I was so excited for this when I saw this up for pre-order because, like I said, I love The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. But I have to say, Robin, I read that book and I was obsessed. I loved it. I then Googled if it was a real story and I was heartbroken that it was fiction. It was so
I'm
convincing.
sorry. I'm Emma. I'm sorry to share that it was a work of my imagination. You're right. You're right.
But what a testament to your writing skills that we are all so convinced that it was this real amazing story. And what a story it would be if it was real. So yeah, that always was my funny moment. But with your new book then, The Wealth Money Can't Buy, I love this topic only because in my work, I talk about manifestation, creating the life of your dreams. And very often we're kind of sold this dream of money is the wealth. Like if you can get enough money or enough career success, whatever it is, that's your version of wealth. And as we know, that comes crumbling down very, very quickly when you realize that that's not your own version of wealth. So, what does wealth mean to you, and how has this changed over the years?
Well, how it's changed is I was in my 20s and I became a litigation lawyer. I was very successful. I had a lot of the material things most people, many people might long for. The only problem is that I'd wake up every morning and I'd look into the mirror and I didn't like the person who was looking back at me. And what's the point of being successful in the world but losing your soul in the process?
Mm.
And so now with the, let's say, benefit of a number of years, many more years under my belt, how would I define success and how would I define wealth? Well, it's the 8 forms of wealth that form the foundation, that central model at the beginning of the book. That model was developed about 15 plus years ago. I was invited by billionaires and sports superstars and entertainment royalty and movement makers to mentor them. And I realized a lot of these people were cash rich and they were life poor. They had
Mm.
yachts or they had mansions or they had big stock portfolios. They experienced liquidity events in their business or businesses. And yet they realized that Zen proverb, wherever you go, there you are. And so I created this 8 forms of wealth model to offer a more real and more true representation of true success and true wealth. And so that's what I measure my success by now, the 8 forms of wealth. And I want to be very clear. And I've seen your work. I've looked at your Instagram and your videos, and they're very good. And I find them very fascinating. So congratulations for that. And
Thank you.
speaking to that, Emma, the 5th form of wealth and the wealth money can't buy is money. And there's nothing wrong with money, as you know so well. Money puts food on the family table. It gives us freedom. It allows us not to be backed into a corner. It allows us to help people in need. So there's 25 chapters where I deconstruct the thinking and habits and ways of being of the billionaires. Having said that, there's 7 other forms of wealth that you absolutely need to get right or to work on for you to live your richest life.
Mm. And we'll go through those 8 different areas a little bit later on. But I really needed your book, Robin, back in 2018 when I sold my first company. So I'd found manifesting in 2016 and I'd created all these vision boards and had manifested so many incredible things. But the last manifestation on that vision board was selling my first company. Nothing to do with spirituality. It was a money saving business. And I'd manifested the buyer. And this was, life-changing money for me at that time that was really going to set me up and give me so many opportunities. And I thought, wow, like I've manifested all these incredible things. I've turned my life around. I've, worked on my depression, my anxiety. My whole life looked hugely different. And I remember that money hitting my bank account, Robin, and I had transferred it to some investments and transferred it wherever, it needed to go. And 10 minutes later, my bank balance was the same as it was before the balance had come in. And I sat there and I thought, oh, I thought that was really going to be something and make me feel a certain way. And I thought that that was going to fulfill me. And actually, there was this massive gaping void within me of that inner work, of that unfulfillment, of realizing, oh my gosh, like I've chased this career success and this money wealth, thinking that this is the definition of wealth or success for me. And I'm so deeply unfulfilled and happy. So, yeah, I needed your book back in 2019 when that happened for me, because I feel like this happens for all of us in different varying degrees. And yeah, that was a really big moment for me where I realized actually all these people selling, manifesting money and all this stuff, it doesn't give you that true version of wealth.
So a few replies to that. I hear you. My mastermind partner experienced the same thing. He sold his company, and on the day he shared the same thing, Emma. He said, on the day my family waited, we were looking at the money to enter the account. A very large amount of money entered the account. And he said, I was just really struck that it didn't make a difference. We could go to the science. Many of your global base of listeners and viewers might be interested. There's a term called hedonic adaptation, and hedonic adaptation is essentially the human phenomena or the psychological phenomena where we get something that we always wanted and then it becomes our new normal and now it doesn't make any difference. And I think that's a really important point to remember. If we think by getting that new car, it's going to solve our inner wounds, we're just kidding ourselves. So having said that, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with wanting what you want. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with ambition. Ambition is almost a dirty word in our world right now. But as human beings, we're the same species that created the Taj Mahal and the pyramids and Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata and the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. By the way, I looked at your Instagram. I think you were in Rome a little while ago. I
I
loved your
was. I was
pictures.
actually I was actually reading your book in Rome, so I loved all the Rome mentions because I was like, oh, we must go here. Robin's mentioned this in the book.
Oh, I'm so happy you went, and it looked like you went to some amazing, amazing places. But so what I would say is play the game and honor your appetites. Just don't let them be your servant and not your master. And don't use material things to identify yourself and find your inner peace. So, and that's where the other 7 forms of wealth come in, because you can have money and it gives you abundance and you can buy nice things and you can enjoy them. I just think they're wonderful servants, bad masters. And then when you do the other 7 forms of wealth, I think that gives you the inner fulfillment. Like, I believe that worldly success without inner peace is fool's gold.
Mm. Mm. So, so true. And do you think that do you think our culture defines wealth in unhealthy ways?
Absolutely. I
Mm.
mean, you're a podcaster. I've heard some podcasts or many podcasts. We have a fantastic guest on today. She has sold her company and she is a 23-year-old billionaire, or he has made so much money, and we're really honored to have the guest on the show. And that's absolutely fine. Having said that, you don't often hear, we have a gardener on our show today who keeps the neighborhood incredibly clean, does their work with extraordinary integrity, and has a great family life. We don't often hear, we have an amazing titan on the show today. This is someone who is a teacher in a school where there's difficult resources and they shape the worldview of 20 children. We don't hear often, today we have a 90-year-old who has figured out how to live a peaceful, loving, beautiful, kind life. So our society, sure, it's a generalization, but our culture does define wealth and success primarily by money in the bank, personal net worth, how big your house is. I do think there's an absolutely amazing change, and I think it started in a big way about 5 years ago, where some people were locked in their homes, and it was a chance to rethink so many values, and we realized how important family is. We realized how important wellness is. We realized how important spirituality is. And last thing I'd say on that is, our culture has encouraged us to hustle and grind, but there's a lot of people who have chased that mountaintop and they've got halfway up or maybe to the summit, and they've realized it was the wrong mountain.
Mhm. Yeah, and that was me in that journey of realizing that actually I had all this amazing career success, money, everything that you would, everything society that had classed as success for me, especially at that age, to realize actually my personal life was not flourishing and not great, and especially that inner work as well in the inner world. And that was my version of wealth, the time that was quiet time and personal time and, friends and, relationships and things like that. And my life at that point did not look like that at all. So it was that massive moment for me. And interestingly, since, I've turned 30 last year, the societal versions of wealth are very interesting because in my 20s, obviously being a millennial, it's very much been like this hustle culture, like go after your dreams, be a girl boss, run your business. And the amount of times that I have had overwhelm and burnout along that journey, I've had to realize that as well. But it's interesting, as I turned 30, I then felt last year those different pressures of, okay, Emma, you have all these amazing books and this amazing career and this amazing podcast, but how does your personal life look? You haven't bought a house yet. And, are you close to getting married, and the children's side of things? And I thought, whoa, this is interesting how those kind of versions of wealth and the kind of societal pressures then shift for people as you kind of go into your 30s and, progress in life. So, yeah, I think your book has come at the perfect time for me to then redefine that version of wealth in this decade of my life, as well as, as you hit those milestones.
So I hear you, and it makes a lot of sense. And what I would encourage is, and you know this so well, Emma, but when I was in my 20s, one of my mentors, we were walking along the seaside on a beautiful day. And he said to me, Robin, run your own race. And that was so powerful for me. Because you're right, society does put these pressures on us, whether it's, like you say, to get married or to buy a house. But I think real success is defining your own scoreboard, regardless of what the world thinks, what social media thinks, what society thinks, and saying, here's my scoreboard for success. This is what feels right to me. There's a model that I have in the 5am Club called Joy as a GPS. Trust your joy, because that is where your wisest self wants you to be. And so I hear you on the pressures of what you need to do when you're 30, and there will be more at 40 and more at 50, and it just continues. But I think the greatest artists, the greatest entrepreneurs, the happiest human beings are people who they realize that their instinct was wiser than their intellect. Intellect is what the world tells you you have to do. Instinct is the higher knowledge. And then that brings us perhaps to the third form of wealth, and the wealth money can't buy. And it is a form of wealth money can't buy, which is family. And, to have a great home life, to have a great family life, there's that chapter in that section called Your Choice of Mate brings 90% of your joy. And the next chapter is the 10,000 dinners question, which we can talk about, which is a great metric for finding true love. But, what's the point of having a lot of money if you don't have love? Or what's the point of being in a mansion, but you're in there all alone? What's the point of having a huge stock portfolio, but your children or your friends won't talk to you anymore?
Absolutely. And I did have the 10,000 dinners question on my questions, so I'll skip to that whilst we're on topic. This was actually one of my favorite chapters in the book. And ironically, I sent a screenshot of my Kindle to my partner and said, like, what are your thoughts on this? Like, would you spend 10,000 dinners with me? And he responded saying, I would spend 10,000 or more with you as long as it's not quiche. Any other meal, just not quiche, because he hates quiche. And it was a great conversation that we had around, actually, we've never spoken about this. And, it's a really interesting way to determine whether you are with the right person. And I look back in my life at previous relationships and I think I could not spend 10,000 dinners with that person. Whereas Alex, my partner, I definitely could feel that. And ironically, the next week we went to Rome and we got engaged. So I think it was a beautiful little
Wow.
part of our story to share that question with each other the week before.
First of all, as they would say in Rome, auguri. And I'm so happy for you and Alex. And like Mr. Riley in the 5am Club, Rome is in my blood. And the fact that you got engaged there, and like I said, I looked at your Instagram. It looked like you were at the Colosseum. Looked like you went to the Vatican. You experienced the magic of Trevi Fountain, and so that chapter, for context, that is the third of the 8 forms of wealth. It's family. And the chapter is Ask the 10,000 Dinners question. It comes from Ayesha Vardag, who was one of the UK's top divorce lawyers. And she was interviewed and she was asked, okay, you're a top divorce lawyer. You've experienced so many conflicts, relationships of conflicts that have fallen apart. What are your rules for a great relationship? And the first answer was separate bedrooms, and that's another conversation. And then the second answer was 10,000 dinners. And the journalist said, what do you mean by 10,000 dinners? And she said, well, looks fade, lust can dissolve. But if you see yourself having 10,000 dinners with that person, that's true love. Keep it close, because great love is hard to find.
Mm.
And so I'm so happy you asked that question of Alex, because I think it's a very, very powerful question. And related to that is that a red flag is a red flag in a relationship. And we could lose 10 or 20 years of our life hoping it's green.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. So let's focus on a little bit of a different angle with your 8 areas. So you've mentored many of the world's most financially successful people, along with professional athletes and entertainment icons. What have you learned about them, as well as the traps they face when they reach material success?
So, a few things. I would say these extraordinary performers, they're possibilitarians. Victims are about CBE, complaint, blame, and excuse. Leaders are about APR, absolute personal responsibility. So to live a great life, it's about seeing possibility. It's about being about can versus can't. It's about getting in the ring and saying step by step, day by day, I'm going to make my ethical ambitions come true. Second, and related to that first point, which is be a possibilitarian, which is remember, we see the world not as it is, we see the world as we are. This is the power of spiritual work, of inner work, of emotional work, of intellectual work, of physical work, of spiritual work. Because the more we grow, the more our income and impact reflects who we are. Second thing about these people, they're careless about the opinions of other people. A lot of us say, we want to run a marathon. We want to sell a business or grow a business. We want to find true love. We want to initiate a spiritual enterprise. And the first time we share it with our boyfriend or best friend or girlfriend or coworker, and they say, be reasonable, that wouldn't work because our vision bumps up against their fears and their limitations, we believe their opinion.
Mm.
So the best producers and the heroic creators are people who have a vision and they understand that no one will believe in you until you believe in you. And when you believe in you, the world will start believing in you.
Mm.
Third thing, these people understand how to build great teams and to excite people around them. Steve Jobs had this term that they applied to him called the reality distortion field. When you'd hear about his ideas and his products, you'd laugh. But when you were in his presence, and I believe through his inner work, his energy, his vibration, he would almost hypnotize you and mesmerize you into believing in what was possible. Third thing, these people understand that, and this is one of the chapters in The Wealth Money Can't Buy, the best way to start is to start. So often we say, where do I start? How do I do it? You just start. You want to run a marathon, get off the sofa, take the first walk. You want to write a best-selling book that changes the world, write the first paragraph today. You want to find true love at the grocery store in the avocado section, have the conversation with someone you're attracted to, see where that leads. But often we complicate it, but the best creators understand that ideation without execution is delusion, and nothing happens until you start. Those are just some of the ideas. We could spend hours deconstructing how they live and think.
Absolutely. And it is that aligned action, like you say, if you've got to put yourself in that field of opportunity and possibility to, attract anything, manifestation wise or anything. And I love what you say around, when you believe that within yourself, the world is going to see you shine and believe that too, because it is that inner reflects that outer, and the level of confidence you have or the belief in yourself absolutely does reflect out. And I've experienced this in my life, obviously starting a spiritual business 8 years ago. Most people were like, are you okay, Emma? You had this, super successful money saving business, what are you doing? Are you okay? But I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And I knew that that was my passion. That was my version of wealth, what I wanted to pursue and help people with in the world. And now everyone's like, oh, she knew what she was doing. But that level of belief I had in myself absolutely reflected into the belief of the loved ones around me eventually. And I think believing in yourself is the biggest hurdle most of the time, but also the biggest reward because it gives you that motivation, it gives you that focus to follow through with the action, even when things aren't feeling successful or abundant in that beginning moment. As we know, it takes time to see the results and see the hard work that you have put into those projects or whatever it is. So having that belief in yourself, I don't know if you agree, Robin, really fuels that period where you don't necessarily see the results.
Absolutely. Often world class takes 10 years of anonymous. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's very easy to be inspired at the moment of fresh insight. What takes a great creative and what is an amazing thing is to maintain your inspiration and commitment to your vision long after the inspiration is faded. And that's where habits come in versus inspiration. And what I would also say, because many people who are listening might say, got you believing in you when no one believes in you. How do we do it? And there's three things I would say in terms of some tactics just to bring hopefully more value. First thing is don't feed the trolls. So critics are nothing more than degenerated dreamers. They once had dreams and they got knocked down, and now they throw rocks at you. Second thing I would say, MVP is very powerful for me. I'd love to hear how you protect your confidence and your quiet dreams until they see the light of day. But MVP in sports circles, it's most valuable player in my methodology, and this has been so helpful to my readers and clients. MVP is meditation, visualization, and prayer. And so every morning, personally, I get up I'm not saying I'm so special. I want to be clear on that. But every morning I've trained myself to get up at 4 a.m. because 4 a.m. is the new 5 a.m. for me. And I spend 45 minutes meditating. And then I visualize what I call my 4 beautiful projects. And then I pray. And we're all looking for a daily tool. It could be 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. But we're all looking for a tool that will build us and introduce us to our highest powers and our gifts and talents. MVP has been extraordinary for me. And then the second thing is, and I'll run through it really quickly, but it's been so helpful to my clients, and it's the 5-question morning maximizer. So you pull out your journal and you have a good cup of coffee or tea, and you ask yourself 5 questions, and you write about a paragraph answering these 5 questions. Number 1, what am I grateful for? We all know about the power of gratitude to manifest and to heal. Number 2, where am I winning? So you focus on the 1% wins, which creates hope, momentum, and energy. Number 3, what will I let go of today? So you don't be what I call in the book a resentment collector, carrying the unforgiven on your back. Number 4, what does my ideal day look like? Because clarity breeds mastery. And your days are your life in miniature. Get the days right, you'll get the life right. And 5, what needs to be said at the end? One paragraph, what do I want said about me at my funeral? And that way you live with intention versus being distracted.
Mm. And I love that MVP. It's really powerful because, yeah, I've had my spiritual practice for 8-ish years now. And it's something that is non-negotiable for me because I know that if I do not set that time aside for myself in the morning, I know my day is just going to be all sorts of chaos. And, I know how I will feel in myself as well. So, I do talk about daily practices on my channels, and I know that people must think like, oh, it's all Emma bangs on about, but I see the power in it. I see how it transforms my day. And I know you do too, Robin. And again, I'm very similar: meditation, intention, prayer, that visualization as well. But it's interesting what you said about the sacredness of your desires as well until they're ready to come out into the world. That is something I'm really passionate about because it's not something that's spoken about enough with manifestation. And I feel like in my early days, I was very much like, sharing with everyone what I was manifesting, even on my public platforms. And it's almost like that too many chefs in the kitchen analogy of you've got all this kind of like energy going in and people putting in their energy and opinions and whatever. So yeah, now I really am such an advocate of keep your manifestations sacred, keep them private to your sacred circle of people that you can absolutely trust unconditionally and who will lift you up and support you and give you that positive energy that you need. And then when it's ready to come out into the world and it's ready and it feels ready for you to share it with the world, that's the best time to do it. So yeah, I definitely learned that one the hard way, but I do agree with it.
Well, that's the sixth form of wealth, and again, that's a form of wealth that money can't buy, which is your social network. If you populate your social network with energy vampires and dream stealers and toxic relationships, there's no way in the world you're going to find inner peace or financial wealth or physical wellness or doing masterful work. So let's go to some science. Nicholas Christakis at Harvard University has realized through his research we are influenced not only by our friends, but the friends of our friends and the friends of our friends' friends. And we could go down the rabbit hole and talk about mirror neurons and the emotional phenomenon of emotional contagion, where you adopt the dominant emotions of the people you spend most of your time with. But it's absolutely essential. I agree with you. When you have these epical ambitions and these heart's longings, I don't think there's a need to advertise them. I think share them with your circle of genius and be around people who lift you up versus tear you down. Be around people who get you and they go, of course you can do that. How can I help?
Absolutely. So, so important. So, whilst we're on the topic of manifestation, I feel like this is the perfect time to ask you this question, Robin. So, what are your top tips for manifesting the life of our dreams?
Well, the first thing I would say is be consistent with your habits. What you do every day is so much more important than what you do once in a while. Consistency is the mother of mastery. And then people say, well, I can't be consistent. We have a gift. Every human being has a gift. Every single one listening and viewing has a gift, and the gift is neuroplasticity, which is the ability of the human brain to adapt and grow, to install new habits with practice. According to University College London, it takes 66 days to wire in a new habit to the point of automaticity. Not a day, not 3 days, 66 days. So I would say be consistent, install the habits, whether it's the 5 a.m. club, whether it's what I call the 5 great hour rule, whether it's a great pre-sleep ritual. But I would say it's very spiritual to have great habits, because great, as you create your habits, so you can predict your future. Second thing I would say, be really clear. So almost every day in my journaling, I do what I call game charts. And this is just a page where I'll say, what's my 3-year future? And I'll deconstruct it personally, professionally, spiritually, or whatever. But clarity breeds mastery. So get really, really clear and then review that often. Third thing to manifest. This might sound strange on a somewhat spiritual show, or maybe you call it a very spiritual show. I'm sure it is. But get really fit. I think your income and your impact in your outer life reflects your energy. Energy is more valuable than even intelligence. You can have great intentions, but if you don't have the fire in the belly and the cognitive capacity to get the job done, nothing's going to happen. Next idea is put in the sweat equity. I think hard work has a bad name in our society right now. And I am not, for 20 years, I have not been a part of the hustle and grind culture. I believe when you work incredibly focused. That's my 5 great hours rule. 5 hours a day of heroic work versus fake work is all you need. But that's how you have lots of free time. But a great relationship, a great monument, a great book, a great spiritual life, it all takes a lot of hard work. And there's nothing wrong with that done with balance in the other forms of wealth. When you work hard, it builds self-respect, and self-respect builds self-love. When you work hard, if you do it right, you push magic into the marketplace and you serve other human beings. When you work hard, you go to the jagged edges of your limits and you realize how far you can go. So you've got to put in the hard work to get anything great in life, as simple as that sounds.
You've got to meet the universe halfway, absolutely. And that consistency is so important. I think there's definitely a notion in the manifesting sphere around, you know, I just put these desires out there and that's it. It comes to me. But actually, if you want to manifest regularly, you have to be setting intentions regularly. You have to be consistent. You have to be showing up for yourself regularly as well. So it all comes into those habits, like you say, that mindset and the energy as well is so, so important. I fully agree with that. So let's talk about the 8 forms of wealth then. We've spoken about a couple of them already, but can you run us through the 8 forms of wealth and how these have personally changed your life?
Sure. First form of wealth is growth. Building intimacy with your gifts and talents is a form of wealth that what money can't buy. I mean, what's more powerful than getting to know the highest version of your greatest vision? What is more powerful than building bravery through acts of micro bravery every day? What is more valuable than getting wise, getting strong, releasing your insecurities, releasing jealousy? Second form of wealth, wellness. Wellness is so important. In one wisdom tradition, they say when we are young, we would sacrifice our health for wealth. When we get old and wise, we would sacrifice all of our wealth for one day of good health. So wellness. Third form of wealth is family. That's great relationships with your family, with your friends, with your neighbors. Fourth form of wealth, mastery. So whether you are a grave digger, a barista, an Uber driver, a CEO, an astronaut, a teacher, seeing your work, the dignity of your work, and understanding that even if no one applauds you, when you push your best work into the world, the higher part of you sees it. And we are the only person we get to be with our own lifetime. And you can't put a price tag on feeling peaceful and great about yourself when your head hits the pillow every night. Fifth form of wealth, money. So like I said, 25 chapters deconstructing the mindsets, daily habits, hacks, tools of billionaires. Sixth form of wealth, your social network. You become your conversations. So that explains tools and tactics and principles to strip out the toxic people so you have beautiful relationships in your work life, personal life, inner life. Seventh form of wealth, adventure. What's it worth to be in flow regularly in your days and to not to lose the sparkle in your eye? And the eighth form of wealth is service. To live for something that is bigger than yourself is a source of joy worth all the money in the bank.
And I love all 8 forms because I feel like they can just relate to so many people. And I think the biggest thing that I found so easy in reading this book, like it normally takes me ages to read books, and I powered through yours just because the chapters were such a nice length. Like they weren't really lengthy. They're like a really nice digestible length, which I loved. And even just the personal anecdotes and stories that you put in there, I think just adds to it so much and brings it so much more to life instead of just here's the ancient wisdom, here's the teaching. You really make it practical for people, which I think really makes it just a whole different experience in the book. And I feel like there's just so much that people can get from that on so many levels. So Robin,
Thank you.
how can listeners define what form of wealth is most important to them? And does this change season to season?
So what I would say is pull out your journal or a napkin and do an evaluation. Go to a quiet place, play some good music. Personally, I like country music every morning. And look at the 8 forms of wealth: growth, wellness, family, mastery, money, community, adventure, and service. And do them in a circle like the model at the beginning of The Wealth Money Can't Buy. And rate yourself from 0 to 10 in each of those areas. And that's going to be a very clear visual on where you're winning and what's working and the areas you need to improve.
And do you feel like I don't want to say purpose here, but our kind of version of wealth or the form of wealth that we're working towards, do you feel like that changes in different seasons of our life? Do you feel like we always stick to certain things, or do you feel like it changes with our different priorities?
You know how I'd answer that, Emma? Yes and no. And what I mean by that is absolutely things change. As you get older, your priorities change. But here's the key, and I really pray that I can express it well. Our priorities change as we get older because I believe we build intimacy with our mortality. And we realize our days are numbered. When you're in your 20s, you're 30, you probably feel you just have so much runway ahead. When you are 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, death becomes much closer. And I don't think talking about death is negative. I think it's inspirational. Because when you realize the shortness of life, you don't fool around. And so I say yes and no because, yes, as you get older, for most of us, our priorities or the 8 forms of wealth, where we are on them can change. I say no because I wish when I was 20, someone had given me this model. Because I deeply believe if you're 15 or 20 or 30 and you learn the 8 forms of wealth and you trust the model, it will give you an incredible framework for living a gorgeous life. Money is there, family is there, health is there, personal growth is there, service is there, community is, it's all there. So I think it's a great metric so that you don't have to be out of balance in your 20s, 30s, 40s and figure it out when it's too late to do anything about it.
So important. So important. And that's why we needed the book. That's why it's here. So Robin, let's talk a little bit more about the book. I know we've been talking about it the whole way through, but for anybody who's like, this has really intrigued me, I've loved this conversation, what can we expect in your book and where can we get it?
Well, what readers can expect is insight, principles, information, wisdom, tools, tactics, stories, real information to help them understand what true wealth is in this world that has sold us this idea that wealth is mostly all about money. So they'll learn how to live your richest life and not only principles, but tools to do it. And where people can get it, it's in all good bookstores. I think you're based in the UK, but it's in all the UK bookstores, Foyles and Waterstones and all those. But it's in bookstores around the world. The audiobook, people are really loving the audiobook. It's on Audible, Amazon, etc., etc.
Amazing. And Robin has very kindly given us 3 signed copies, personally signed by Robin, for our listeners. So I will link the information on how to enter that competition below for everybody. So you can go and test your manifesting luck and win a book by Robin, a signed copy. But Robin, my last question to you today then is, what is one piece of life advice that you would like to leave my lovely listeners with?
Say 2 things. Number 1, don't postpone trusting your heart's desires to some ideal time in the future. Start it today. It's amazing how far you can get in a month or 2. And then the second thing I would say is be kind. Sounds so simple, but just being kind is a gift you give other people, and it's a super gift you give to your self-respect and your conscience and yourself.
I love that. Beautiful words of wisdom there. Thank you, Robin. And what I really loved about the book as well, I know I've said what I've loved about the book so many times, but I want to chuck this in here before we wrap up, is how you make ancient wisdom and teaching so accessible for people. Because I think in these modern times, you can have all these fancy words and these fancy scriptures. And I think people a lot of the time are like, I don't get it. I get it, but I don't get it. But what I love is how you make it so accessible for people with your stories, with the tools. And I think it's just beautiful because it really brings these big concepts into really realistic scenarios and tools and practices that people can just get up and do today, which is great. So thank you for creating this book. It's been one of my favorite reads of this year so far. I definitely needed it. It came into my life at the right time. And I just think it's such a gift to everybody. So I know they're going to love it just as much as I have.
Thank you, Emma. Keep lighting up so many lives and doing the great work that you do. And I wish you an amazing future. And thanks so much for your time. I've enjoyed it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for your time as well today, Robin. So everything that we've mentioned here in this podcast will be linked down below. So you have an easy, accessible link to Robin's website and also your book. But Robin, where can everyone find you if they want to learn more about you and your work?
Instagram at robinsharma.com, ROBINSHARMA. YouTube, I have, I'm guessing, 250 videos, high content videos that are information rich and a lot of tactics on habits, life, success, spirituality, and TikTok. And then the mothership is robinsharma.com. If anyone has resonated with what I've shared, they can go there and sign up to my newsletter where I send out posts and videos once or twice a week.
Amazing. And we will link all of that below for you. But thank you so much, Robin, for joining us today. I have so thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. It's been one of my favorite interviews we've done so far. So thank you for your time and thank you for all the wisdom that you shared with us.
Really appreciate it. Thank you, Emma.